I've been really getting into Blind Melon over the last week, and part of the reason for that is I picked up a copy of this. Yes, it's their second album, Blind Melon's Soup. And the second reason for that is that I've just finished watching the documentary about Shannon and, since the band All I Can Say, which is a collection of Shannon's home movies and road movies, and it's really poignant, powerful, funny, and definitely sad at times. So that's really got me in the mood for some reappraisal. And once I came up with this album and got into it, I was absolutely in the mood. It came out in 1995. It sort of taps into that alt rock sort of neo-psychedelic type of thing. It's a little bit more complex and more interesting in many ways musically from its predecessor. And I don't want to sort of go overboard into the lyrical content or the thematic content of this album because it's very dark in many places. But it's interesting that Shannon Hoon, the lead singer, was saying at the time, what inspires me? I don't know, to hear the story of someone who's been dealt a bad hand, to be sane and insane inspires me. There's that dualism between happy and sad, dark and light, etc. And he also says, I know I'm not the only person who feels the way I feel. So it's just a matter of me being able to communicate with people through my songs. So the album, as I said, came out in 1995. And during this time, and the lead up to it, they supported Soundgarden, Neil Young, the Stones. They played at Woodstock 95. And they previewed some of the songs off this album, 2x4. What else did they do? Wilt, St Andrew's Fall, and they interestingly did the song Soup, which never ended up being on the Soup album, and that was a song for Kurt Cobain. But they never really had truly had the ability to support this album because, of course, it was 2 months later that Shannon passed away. Steve features a stellar band here. We've got Brad Smith on bass and backing vocals, and Isn't He a Player? We've got Christopher Thorn and Roger Stevens on guitars, and then we've got Glen Graham on drums. Produced by Andy Wallace, who at the time had mixed Nevermind by Nirvana, and co-produced Jeff Buckley's Grace, Say No More, and also Faith No More's King for a Day, Fall for a Lifetime. So the question must be asked, if this album had really had a chance to grow and to breathe and to be supported on the road, would it have been ranked as highly as their first album? In fact, would it have been considered an absolute lost classic? Well, let's take a deep dive and find out. Woo! The album opens with Hello Goodbye, which was a 50-second unlisted track on the original vinyl and CD, I believe. And it sort of gives us that New Orleans Mardi Gras feel of a parade about to start. And then we go headlong into Galaxie. What a song to begin. And this is about Shannon, supposedly about his first breakup, but also a reference to his 1963 Ford Galaxie. There's a tsunami attack when we come in. Bam, bam, bam. Oh, I love that syncopation there. The rhythm section is absolutely on fire, and I love Christopher's angular attack on that rhythm guitar. I think he's playing a Dan Electro. He certainly is on some of the videos that I've seen. It's a fast funk groove that we've got going here, and then we go to the halftime swing of the chorus, which is absolutely beautiful. And it seems to me that Shannon's singing about here that the Cadillac that he's driving or his newfound fame isn't him at all. He's more aligned with his 1963 Galaxie, and so don't think of him that way. Then we go to 2x4, which is about his experiences at Detox, and we've got some jaunty and once again funky playing here with some very cool syncopation by Glenn on the drums. I love Brad's bass playing here. Throughout the album, he's absolutely sterling. This guy is a phenomenal bass player, and I think he's playing a Fender jazz bass from what I can see. But then there's a storm before the calm when we get into that really heavy power. It's almost like a steamroller coming at us. It's an overwhelming sonic assault. And we've got the feedback going from both guitars, which is absolutely mind-melting. And it's got that sense of, it reminds me quite a lot of the repetition of the Beatles' I Want You, She's So Heavy. It is inexorable coming towards us. Great guitar line there by Rogers there. And some of the lyrics, needle, fetal, someone's pouring warm gravy all over me, and you see that synthetic therapy. Don't you know it seems to be so unappealing, but oh, what a feeling. I wish I could have sung it in sort of in the jauntiness that it's intended, but still, fantastic song, 2x4, and an early standout. And then maybe it's time for a breather, a bit of a come down, and we go to Vernie. Never knew what this song was about, but I did a bit of research and found out it was about Shannon's grandmother and perhaps the inspiration that he gains from her. Again, I love Brad's wandering, surfing bass line above this ocean of guitars. And the breakdown, it goes into an almost Hendrixian rhythm, which is played by Rogers. And then we have Christopher just soars over the top of it at the end, and this really builds up that psychedelic quotient on the album I was talking about earlier, this neo-psych. And there's that childlike nursery rhyme quality to that final section there. Roaming through the cupboard, jar of pickles never opened since 1983. Peanuts in a pile and Elvis down the aisle singing gallantly. Oh, yeah. And then the build up of that guitar, absolutely swinging. It's fantastic. And then, we seemingly get a little bit more of a breather with Skinned. And it's the story behind this is apparently Christopher had bought himself a banjo, learnt about 3 chords and was messing around with it and never expected that Shannon was going to write a song. And the song that Shannon wrote about it was about serial killer Ed Gein, I think his name is pronounced, who was a body snatcher. And he wrote the lyrics and even throw a kazoo in there. And when you read some of these lyrics, I'll make a shoehorn out of your shin. I'll make a lampshade of durable skin. And oh, don't you know that I'm always feeling able when I'm sitting home and carving out your navel? I mean, my God. I mean, Shannon said about this, it was horrible, but I believe there's 2 sides to everything. To find humor in things can really keep you going. And that sort of reminded me of my own life and experience. And I've been teaching drama for many years and black comedy. And there's sort of that idea that laughter can create catharsis to help us deal with very terrible situations. So true. It's an interesting song. I have to say that, the one that sort of gets us a little bit off kilter, and it's interesting. After that, we go into Toes Across the Floor, and I always love a song which has bass harmonics in it, and it starts up with bass harmonics in this very dramatic song, which is asking questions for which I think there are probably no answers lyrically. There's some flute in here, which is delivered beautifully. Is that Brad on the flute? I'm not sure. And some chanting with a ooh, ah, ooh, ah. There's a real folky, psyche feel to this one. And once again, the arrangements make me feel that the song structures are a little bit more complex than on the first album, and this goes all the way throughout. And there's a sense of surfacing through the drama at the end, with a sense of an Eastern feel to the outro here, which is kind of absolutely beautiful. This takes us on to Walk, a song about addiction and recovery. And then we've got this acoustic unplugged feeling to this song. Mandolin being played by Christopher, and the harmonica from Shannon also really, really tasty. And some great lyrics here about recovery. And I can't believe I have to bang my head against this wall again. But the blows, they have just a little bit more space in between them. Going to take a breath and try again. And there's a sense of somebody who's desperately aware of their situation and trying to get out. In that movie, All I Can Say, one of the last frames is of Shannon saying, I've got to get off the bus. I've got to get off the bus. Dumptruck comes up next, and it's up tempo. It's fanging. It's got a jazzy feel to it, and this band can swing. And then another all-out assault, a great instrumental break in the middle, and it's got maybe an influence of that metal funk that the Chili Peppers were doing at the time. And the end section of it is almost holy, as Shannon pleads, nothing's going to come between my dump truck and me. Another great song, but then potentially we save another great song to the last song of the first side, which is Car Seat, God's Presence. And again, horrible lyrical content about this person called Susan Smith, who committed infanticide, I suppose we'd have to say. There's an Eastern feel to it, and the cello comes in from this guy, Miles Tackett, and it's so absolutely perfect. Great backing vocals. Brad does these live, I assume. And then there's a voiceover with the song segues from car seat into God's presence. And I always felt that this was sort of like a police radio dispatch talking about what had happened with Susan Smith and that disaster. But no, it's in fact a poem from Shannon's great grandmother that's spoken called God's Presence. And it gives that sense of that police dispatch and that distorted sound on the radio, gives a sense of the poem actually coming from across time and space, and it's quite otherworldly. And you can hear this connection between great grandmother and great grandson here, and it's really great. It's a brilliant way to finish the side, an absolute fave. So, not a foot wrong on side A. Let's flip it over and head on to side 2. I don't know if you can have another side to a bowl of soup, but that's where we're going to the B side of this bowl of soup, and we start with Wilt, which begins with a sort of Aerosmith style swagger to it. And then we have some guitar coming out, what seems to be these Leslie rotating speakers to give an otherworldly feel to the chorus, as it would be called here. And then the solo section seems to be a bit of like their take on Led Zeppelin, with Christopher playing an ebow to get those writhing, sustained notes. It sounds like a crazy violinist. There's a lot to unpack here, but we're really getting to see some of their influences, and they weren't all sort of Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, and Nirvana. We've just talked about Led Zeppelin and Aerosmith, and the next song, The Duke, really attacks into another influence, I think, and that is Yes. Strange, I know. I mean, there can be comparisons, of course, between Shannon Hoon's vocal stylings and John Anderson's as well. But I think it goes a little bit more deeper than that, because the Duke begins with this heavenly beauty. It's a surreal ethereality, and the open chords swell with the Hammond organ. And so we're really getting that sense of this comparison with Yes. And I get also this feeling of floating on top of a topographic oceans, and the organ just swirling, keeping the oceans just pumping along. Great lyrics here too. Out here in nothing, engulfed by the sea, and there's no one here except those fishes and me. I think I could die here. Then I'm hit, leveled hard by the rising tide. A killer solo from Rogers finishes in a sonic meltdown. It's a total majesty provided here by a band on top of their game, and this is an absolute favourite of mine, and I would have loved to have seen it live, but you know, what can you do? And then we move on to St Andrew's Fall. And again, very dark lyrical content. This is a song that was composed in response to them seeing a person jump off a building, unfortunately, to their demise, and sort of Shannon's idea of processing that and how to deal with it as time goes on. It's an almost cheery opening with Shannon playing guitar, and there's a light sort of pop sound, a pop groove. Which is echoed in those bass and the guitars and the drums. And there's a sense of beauty here which juxtaposes with the really dark lyrical matter and the horror to having to live to that voyeuristic experience. And then there's a total chaos when the band seemingly goes out of control and speeds up, giving us this sense of falling and the chanting of no, no, no. It's just like it's rolling out of control, the snowball gathering pace as it hurtles down the mountain until a very mellow ending with a stunning use of the cello, again by Miles Tackett. Shannon's lyrics: I can't tell you how many ways I've sat and viewed my life today, but I can tell you that I don't think I can find an easier way. So if I see you walking hand in hand with a three-armed man, you know I'll understand. You should have been in my shoes yesterday. I've got no idea who this three-armed man is. Is it God? Is it a new partner for his girlfriend, who Shannon perceives is a little bit better than him? Maybe you might like to tell me in the comments. From there, we go into New Life, which is written about Shannon and Lisa's new baby, Nico. And there's a sudden respite from a lyrical respite and a sense of hope that perhaps there can be a phoenix-like rise from addiction. The Hammond organ really lifts this song, and one can sense that Shannon is just reaching out for the heavens and believing in some greater power. And maybe that greater power is just Nico herself. But there's also some panic and fear in the chorus, because I find it really interesting that Shannon writes, because now she's telling me that she'll have my baby, and a father figure I am to be. When I'm looking into the eyes of our own baby, will it bring new life to me? And I think there's a couple of interesting things, that he sees himself that he's going to be a father figure rather than a father. And it seems like the onus is also on Nico to bring life into Shannon, as Shannon and Lisa have brought life into Nico. And then we're taking it out with this really bizarre waltz in 3/4 time, and we get that sense of swirling up to heaven here, a reverse tornado of such. Next track up is Mouthful of Cavities. See, I got a lot of fiends around, and they see everything on the inside out. And we go back to that acoustic unplugged section. Jena Kraus delivers some wonderful co-vocals and backing vocals here, which is a bit like a sort of Sandy Denny moment from Battle of Evermore, particularly when it's quiet. And when the band kicks in and swells, the chorus just fades us out away. Again, that Zeppelin sort of thing, with Jena Kraus being used, and also Christopher's mandolin being used occasionally on the album, gives us that sense of the pastoral, the rural, and the delving back into the 1970s and the 1960s. We finish with Lemonade, which is a return to the sound of Hello, Goodbye, that New Orleans parade sort of sound that starts out the album. It's kind of like my least favorite song. I assume that we can take Lemonade as being a euphemism for drugs. You let me know if I've got that completely wrong. But then it opens out into a swagger, which again links us to that early 1970s influence of rock and prog. But then that's where it gets interesting, because there's some hand clapping, a round of applause to finish. Band's done a great job, and then it keeps going. There's, my God, it's upside down, isn't it? Yes, it is. There's a hidden track on here. And I listened to it the first time, I went, what the hell is that? And then the second time I listened to it, I thought, I'm going to time this because it goes for an extra couple of minutes. And what it is it's the Pregap hidden track from the CD. Now, I had that CD for years before I gave it away, and I never knew it was there. So if you've got the CD, apparently you put it in, press play, and then hit reverse, so it goes back to a track 0, and then you'll hear this song. Wow. It's got some beautiful acoustic guitar. It's got a lovely lyrical electric guitar, slide guitar, or is it even pedal steel? I've got a sense of David Gilmour playing here, and dreaming back-masked, reversed vocals from Shannon, which gives us a sense of new life. The second last song here, it's one of my very, very favorite moments of the album, and what a way to finish with an extra 2 hours of beautiful psychedelic goodness. Fantastic pickup and discovery. So there we go. One of my least favorite song on the album turns out to be something totally rewarding. And as a consequence, over 14 and a bit songs, we have something that's nearing perfection, certainly in terms of my listening pleasure. What do you think? So our bowl of soup is finished, and there's only one thing to do, and that's to get another bowl stuck in your belly straight away. But before we go on to that, I want to draw your attention to a couple of things about the album and the pressing that I've got here. And the first thing is the sticker up here, which is not actually a sticker, it's part of the album cover. And that sort of made me a little bit curious as to why that was happening. And it was then that I found out that this album, the one with the orange splatter, is a bootleg. It's a counterfeit. And I found out this from somebody who was commenting on Discogs. And it is a little bit noisy in its playback. It's got a bit of pop and crackle, which you don't really notice once the music starts up. But still, if I had have known it beforehand, and this was new and sealed, should I say, and if I had have known it at the time, I would have saved my money to buy an official reissue. But still, I'm really glad to have it in my collection. And it's been such a pleasure going on this gastronomical journey through Blind Melon soup. And remember, if music of any size, shape, or food substance gives you pleasure, then who am I to argue with your opinion? I hope you've enjoyed going on this journey with me as well, and perhaps that you might give a like to this video, and maybe check out one of my other reviews, because there's some great albums in there and that I would love to share with you. But until next time, hope you're all doing super well, and bye now.